Michael Reeves always knew he didn't belong. Not in the way that made a child feel special or destined for something greater, but in the quiet, isolating sense that he was fundamentally out of step with the people around him. Growing up in a faded corner of Pittsburgh's West End, where porch railings leaned like drunks and front yards were more weeds than grass, Michael often wondered what it would feel like to live in a home where someone asked how your day was, or, better yet, actually waited to hear the answer. His father, Leonard Reeves, was a long-haul trucker whose leather skin and gravelly voice gave him an almost mythical presence in the house when he wasn't gone for weeks on the road. And when he was home, he treated the space like a refueling station. Food, beer, silence, bed. There were no hugs, no bedtime stories, no questions about school. Michael learned early on that silence was the default language of his family. Anything outside of it, questions, complaints, even joy, was met with irritation or outright dismissal. His mother, Janice, had once been a nurse's aide before a back injury pushed her into early unemployment and daytime television. She filled her time with cigarettes, reality shows, and the occasional rant about how ungrateful kids were these days. Michael often found her slouched in the recliner, ashtray balanced on the armrest, a faint fog of smoke hovering above her head like a halo of neglect. She didn't dislike Michael exactly. She just didn't know what to do with him. A quiet, inquisitive boy with a habit of reading encyclopedias at the kitchen table wasn't something she had expected when she imagined motherhood. Michael's older brother, Sean, had followed a more familiar path. After barely graduating high school, he drifted into warehouse work and occasional landscaping gigs. He spent most of his free time in the garage, working on his car or playing video games in the basement with friends who left behind trails of beer cans and muddy footprints. In this environment, Michael's curiosity and ambition stood out like a tuxedo at a tailgate party. At age 8, he spent a month building a cardboard model of the solar system, complete with fishing wire and glow-in-the-dark paint. He'd been so proud of it, even made a little plaque that said, "By Michael Reeves, Grade 3. He'd asked his mom if she could come to his school's science night. Her answer still echoed in his mind more than a decade later. "That's on a Tuesday, right? Honey, that's bingo night. You know I can't miss that." His father didn't even acknowledge the invitation. That night, Michael stood by his project as other kids beamed with pride beside them, their parents taking photos and asking questions. He smiled for a teacher's camera, blinking back tears, pretending he didn't care. It was the first time he felt the deep, invisible crack that separated him from his family. Over time, the fracture only widened. By the time Michael reached high school, his self-reliance had solidified into something almost feral. He studied at the public library until closing because it was quiet. He volunteered for every extracurricular club that gave him an excuse to stay out of the house. He taught himself how to write scholarship essays by studying winning samples online. His guidance counselor, Mrs. Hawthorne, was the first adult to notice his potential. "You've got something in you, Michael," she told him once, sliding a stack of college brochures across her desk. "And you've earned the right to chase it." He applied to 18 colleges. 18. Each application was a secret rebellion, typed and submitted in the darkness of his bedroom after midnight, paid for with fee waivers Mrs. Hawthorne helped him acquire. He checked his email religiously, heart racing every time he saw a subject line beginning with "Congratulations." When the acceptance letter from the University of Pennsylvania arrived, Michael sat on his bed and stared at the screen for a full 5 minutes before whispering aloud, "I got in." He laughed, but it caught in his throat halfway, turning into a quiet sob. For a moment, he imagined telling his parents. He pictured their faces lighting up, imagined his father clapping a hand on his shoulder, his mother hugging him tightly. But the fantasy faded as quickly as it came. When he finally broke the news at dinner, it was over a plate of microwave lasagna and store-brand soda. His voice trembled with forced excitement as he explained that he'd gotten a partial scholarship and would be applying for grants and loans to cover the rest. He'd already looked into a part-time job on campus. He wouldn't need much from them, just their blessing. His father didn't look up from his plate. "College is a scam," he said flatly. "You think you're better than me now because some fancy school says you can sit in a classroom all day?" His mother glanced at the TV, where a rerun of her favorite show was playing. "Will you be back on weekends?" she asked. "I can't be lugging laundry up and down those stairs all by myself." That was the extent of the conversation. No congratulations, no questions, no celebration. Later that night, alone in his room, Michael opened his email and clicked the Accept Offer button. As the confirmation message loaded, he whispered again to no one, "I'm getting out." In the months leading up to his departure, Michael juggled 2 part-time jobs, including bagging groceries and tutoring younger kids after school. He squirreled away every dollar he could, knowing he'd need it. He watched YouTube videos about dorm room hacks and budget meal prepping. He read forums for first-generation college students and took notes. He told himself that if he planned every detail, he wouldn't feel the void of what was missing. Move-in day arrived on a humid August morning. His parents hadn't offered to help him pack. In fact, they hadn't spoken much at all that week. But when he asked if they'd drive him to Philadelphia, they agreed, grudgingly. His father complained about the gas prices for most of the trip. His mother spent the drive scrolling through her phone and sighing loudly whenever he tried to start a conversation. When they pulled up to the dorms, Michael turned to them. "Thanks for driving me," he said quietly. His father grunted. "Just don't waste your time, all right? People like us don't belong in places like this." His mother gave him a quick, one-armed hug, then reminded him not to blow all that financial aid money on pizza and hoodies. They drove away while he was still signing his housing paperwork. Standing in his half-empty dorm room, surrounded by unfamiliar voices and the distant sounds of parents helping their kids unpack, Michael looked around and felt a hollow ache settle in his chest. He walked over to the window and stared down at the campus below, watching families take group photos, some parents crying as they said goodbye. Michael pressed his forehead against the cool glass and whispered to himself, "I'll make this worth it, I swear." The sun dipped lower, casting golden light across the city as the first day of the rest of his life began, quietly and alone, but not defeated, not yet. Michael's first semester at the University of Pennsylvania struck him like a tidal wave. Nothing, not the endless scholarship blogs he'd devoured, not the advice columns, not the YouTube dorm tours, had prepared him for the sheer academic brutality of it all. His classes in political theory and constitutional law moved at a pace that made his head spin. Professors assigned readings with the casual cruelty of people who assumed everyone had all day to devote to their syllabus. And most of his classmates? They'd arrived with polished resumes, parents with graduate degrees, and confidence like cologne, thick, ever-present, and hard to ignore. By the second week of classes, Michael had already secured a job in the dining hall. He worked 5 days a week, often during the coveted evening shifts when other students were attending clubs or social events. On weekends, he worked early mornings to cover the breakfast rush. The job was exhausting, humiliating at times, cleaning up after students who dropped trays and never apologized, but it paid. He learned to make ramen taste like a meal and stretched every dollar of his meal plan like a game of survival. His roommate, Chris, came from a private school in Connecticut. At first, Chris assumed Michael was antisocial, then maybe hostile. But as the weeks passed and he saw Michael juggling textbooks and greasy aprons, sleep-deprived and relentless, he softened. "Dude," Chris said one night, watching Michael scribble notes with bleary eyes, "do you ever stop?" Michael looked up, blinking. "Stop what?" "Working, studying, existing like you've got 30 hours in your day." Michael gave a weak smile. "If I stop, I fall behind. And if I fall behind, I fail. And if I fail—" He didn't finish the sentence. Chris didn't push. As fall turned into winter, Michael found sanctuary in a hidden corner of the campus library. There, he could spread out his notes, drink vending machine coffee, and disappear into his work. It was during one of these late-night study sessions that he met Savannah Liu. Savannah, a second-year law student with bright eyes and an even brighter mind, was working on a brief for her moot court competition. She noticed Michael nodding off over a thick book on Rousseau. "You're highlighting the same sentence over and over," she said, not unkindly. Michael jolted awake and gave a sheepish smile. "Guess I'm trying to absorb it through osmosis." She chuckled and offered him a granola bar. "You need fuel more than theory." Their friendship grew from shared exhaustion and mutual respect. Savannah became one of the first people on campus to truly see him, not just as a hard-working student, but as a person. She started dropping by his library corner with extra snacks. Sometimes she'd quiz him on material or challenge his arguments just for fun. Their banter became a balm. Then there was Tom Gardner. Tom was a senior in the economics department and one of Michael's shift supervisors in the dining hall. He noticed Michael's discipline early on and took him under his wing. Tom, who had grown up in similar circumstances, understood the quiet panic that lived behind Michael's eyes, the desperation to succeed, to prove something, to escape. "You don't have to be a machine to be successful," Tom told him during a break one evening. "Burnout doesn't look good on anyone." Michael appreciated the sentiment, but he knew there was no room to slow down. Not yet. He tried to keep up with his family, too, at first. During that first year, he called home every Sunday evening. He'd sit on the steps behind his dorm building, phone pressed to his ear, and excitedly share news about his classes, new friends, campus traditions. His mother would often interrupt with updates about their neighbors or reality TV shows. His father rarely took the phone, and when he did, the conversation was brief and focused on money. "Don't be spending all that loan money on fancy food," Leonard would grunt. "Hope you're learning something useful." When Michael mentioned he was thinking of double majoring in philosophy and public policy, his father snorted. "Philosophy? You trying to be a monk now?" After a while, the calls stopped being weekly, then monthly, then only on birthdays and holidays. Each conversation left Michael feeling more hollow than the last. Sophomore year brought new challenges and new resolve. Michael picked up a second job as a research assistant for Professor Grayson, a respected political theorist with a sharp tongue and a mind like a scalpel. Michael transcribed interviews, summarized policy journals, and compiled data late into the night. In return, he gained not just a paycheck, but mentorship. "You have potential," Professor Grayson said one day, peering over his glasses. "You just need to stop trying to prove your worth to people who can't see it." That struck deeper than Michael expected. Despite the crushing workload, 2 jobs, full course load, and constant self-pressure. Michael managed to maintain a GPA above 3.8. He made the dean's list every semester. But it wasn't just about grades. It was about proving, to himself more than anyone else, that he deserved to be there. By junior year, he joined the First Gen Scholars Association and quickly became one of its most active members. He organized workshops, mentored younger students, and even started a blog series about navigating college without family support. The community he built there became the family he never had. Meanwhile, his parents drifted further away. They visited once during the winter of sophomore year while driving through Philadelphia to attend a family gathering in New Jersey. Michael gave them a tour of the campus, bought them lunch with his dining points, and tried to share some of his academic work. His father commented on the high cost of parking. His mother complained about the cold. Neither asked about his classes. When they left, Michael stood on the curb and watched their car pull away, feeling like a stranger in their lives. Lily's parents, the ones who sent care packages and cards, sometimes invited Michael to join for dinner when he couldn't afford groceries. Tom took him home for Thanksgiving one year, where Michael nearly cried when Tom's mom asked if he wanted a second helping. He didn't stop grinding. He couldn't. Senior year arrived like a storm. Michael juggled 3 major commitments: his coursework, his job at the think tank in Center City, and his ongoing mentorship roles on campus. The think tank internship was intense, intellectually demanding, and wildly prestigious. He worked with policymakers, sat in on strategy meetings, and even co-wrote a white paper on urban housing policy. It was this internship that led to a full-time job offer from their New York office. The offer arrived just before Thanksgiving. Michael's fingers trembled as he read the email. "We are pleased to offer you the position of junior policy analyst with a starting salary of..." He stared at the screen, then printed the letter, folded it carefully, and placed it in an envelope to show his parents over the holiday. When he brought it up at the dinner table, they barely looked up from their plates. "New York? That's far," his mother said. "Who do you even know there?" Leonard frowned. "What's the rent like in that city? Probably can't even afford to breathe." "You sure this job's real?" Michael didn't reply. He didn't need to. In the months that followed, as graduation crept closer, he began counting down the weeks, not just to the ceremony, but to freedom. The final stretch felt surreal. He spent his days preparing his thesis on democratic erosion in post-industrial regions, and his nights completing onboarding forms for the job in New York. He also reserved a hotel room near campus for his parents. He paid for it himself, knowing they'd never do it. He sent a formal invitation in the mail, complete with a handwritten note. He reminded them every week on the phone. "We'll be there," his mother said. "Don't be so dramatic." But each time her voice carried less certainty. 6 weeks before the ceremony, she casually mentioned that Leonard might have work that weekend. 4 weeks out, she asked what time the ceremony started, sounding distracted. 3 weeks out, she called to ask whether it was okay if they came late because there was a family barbecue they had already RSVP'd to. Michael tried not to let the dread consume him, but it did. Quietly, relentlessly. He reduced the restaurant reservation from 4 to 3. He stopped mentioning graduation in texts. 1 week before the ceremony, he texted, "Just confirming. Are you still coming?" They didn't reply. Instead, they posted a photo of their backyard grill with the caption, "Can't beat good company and ribs on a sunny weekend." The day before the ceremony, he called. Janice picked up. Her tone was too cheerful. "Sweetie, your father pulled a muscle-lifting groceries, and I really can't drive all that way alone. Plus, we promised to bring potato salad to the barbecue." Michael stared at the wall as she spoke. It was happening. Again. He managed to whisper, "You're not coming?" "It's just one event, honey. They're all the same. Caps and speeches and all that. We're proud of you, though. Maybe they'll live stream it." He hung up, unable to respond. The silence that followed was not new, but this time it was final. As he lay awake in his dorm bed that night, staring at the ceiling, the weight of 4 years, no, a lifetime, pressed on his chest. Tomorrow, he would graduate, and he would do it alone. But something inside him was shifting. He was done asking people to show up for him. From now on, he would show up for himself. Graduation day began with gray skies hanging heavy over Philadelphia. The air smelled like damp concrete, and the streets glistened faintly from a rain that had fallen during the night. Michael Reeves stood in front of the mirror in his nearly packed dorm room, adjusting the tassel on his cap for the 5th time. His gown hung loosely from his frame, a little too big in the shoulders, but it didn't matter. Nothing about this day was going according to plan. He had been awake since 5:30, too anxious to sleep, and the silence in the room felt unnatural. Chris, his former roommate, had moved out 2 days earlier. The space was too empty now, and Michael's heart too full of disappointment, of resignation, of thoughts he didn't want to entertain. He checked his phone again. No messages. Not from his father. Not from his mother. No last-minute text saying they'd left home early. No call saying they were running late but on the way. Just silence. He looked down at the guest ticket holder in his hand. 3 embossed pieces of cardstock were tucked inside, each one with the university's logo and his name printed neatly in cursive. He had ordered them with hope. He had imagined handing them out proudly, seeing the look on his parents' faces when they arrived on campus. Instead, the tickets felt like mocking reminders of something that would never be. Michael slipped the holder into his backpack and zipped it shut. He had exactly 27 minutes to get to the main quad for check-in. As he stepped outside, a slight drizzle coated the steps, misting his glasses. The campus buzzed with activity. Graduates in black robes, families clutching umbrellas, children running between chairs, laughter echoing through the humid air. The main lawn had been transformed into a sea of white folding chairs, all facing the grand stage beneath the large purple and white banner that read, "Commencement Ceremony, Class of 2023. Students clustered into groups for photos, caps angled just right, their arms around proud parents. Some held bouquets. Others wore stoles in their cultural colors or cords that marked their achievements. Michael kept his hands in his pockets, walking briskly past the celebration like someone late to a meeting rather than approaching a life milestone. When he reached the check-in table, a volunteer handed him his name card and pointed him toward the line forming an alphabetical order. As he moved to join it, he heard a familiar voice call his name. "Michael!" He turned. Savannah stood there in her black robe and heels, her eyes shining. Behind her were Tom and 2 other friends from the first-gen scholars group. "I saved you a spot," she said, slipping her arm through his. Tom gave him a quick, one-armed hug. "Proud of you, man." Michael forced a smile. "Thanks." He wanted to say more, wanted to explain the hollow feeling expanding in his chest, but he couldn't find the words. They waited together as the line began to move. Faculty marshals guided them down the stone paths toward the stage, and the sound of orchestral music drifted across the lawn. As they took their seats among the graduates, Michael's eyes scanned the crowd. He looked for his mother's reddish-blonde curls, his father's gray cap, even the old leather jacket his dad wore everywhere. Nothing. Just strangers. Just families that weren't his. The university president stepped to the podium, her voice rich and practiced as she welcomed everyone. Students cheered, cameras flashed, faculty members beamed from behind their reading glasses. As the speeches began, Michael felt his phone vibrate in the pocket of his gown. A flicker of hope shot through him. Maybe they had come after all. Maybe they were here and just couldn't find seats. He pulled the phone out quickly. It wasn't a text. It was a Facebook notification. Janice Reeves tagged you in 3 photos. The preview showed a familiar kitchen counter, paper plates, a large crock pot, bottles of soda, and red plastic cups. The caption read, "Super Bowl Sunday Prep. Who needs boring ceremonies when you've got buffalo dip and great company?" Michael stared at the screen, frozen. The timestamp was only minutes old. He looked up, his eyes stinging. The speaker at the podium had just called his department. "Political science majors, please proceed to the stage." He stood in line, his vision blurring. One by one, names were called, applause rang out, families cheered, and then Michael Aaron Reeves, Bachelor of Arts in Political Science, summa cum laude. He stepped onto the stage. Every movement felt mechanical. Climb the stairs, shake the dean's hand, smile for the camera. He heard polite applause, but not the whoops and cheers others received. In the corner of his eye, he saw Tom and Savannah clapping with all their might. But his parents' seats were empty. He descended the steps and returned to his chair, the diploma case heavy in his hands. The rest of the ceremony passed in a blur. When the last name was called and caps were thrown into the air, Michael remained seated for a moment, holding onto his mortarboard and watching the black silhouettes dance above him like lost birds. After the ceremony, the lawn erupted into celebration. Families poured onto the grass, hugging graduates, posing for photos, crying and laughing. Michael stood on the edge, unsure where to go. Savannah found him. "My parents want a photo with you," she said gently. "They brought you a lei." Before he could protest, she draped a string of flowers over his neck. Her mother hugged him. Her father clapped him on the back. They posed for pictures, and for a moment, Michael let himself smile. Tom came over with his girlfriend and offered a small wrapped gift, a notebook with "Start Writing Your Next Chapter" embossed in gold on the cover. "You did this," Tom said. "You made it. Don't let anyone take that from you." Michael nodded, swallowing back a wave of emotion. After 30 minutes of posing and accepting congratulations from professors and classmates, he excused himself. He walked quickly across campus, back to his dorm, his backpack slung over one shoulder, gown dragging slightly on the sidewalk. When he reached the room, he didn't even bother turning on the light. He sank onto the bed, still wearing his cap and gown, and pulled out his phone. There were 3 new texts. The first was from his mother. "Hope graduation went okay. Did you get good photos? Post them so we can see." The second, a few minutes later, "Oh, and don't forget to bring back the Tupperware I loaned you if you come home soon." The third was from his father. "You done playing scholar? House needs new gutters and your brother says you've got a real job lined up. Time to pitch in." Michael stared at the screen. Then, slowly, he typed a reply. "It hurt that you didn't come. This was the most important day of my life, and you chose a party instead." He hesitated, thumb hovering over the send button. Then he tapped it. Seconds later, his phone buzzed. His mother replied, "Don't be so sensitive. It's just a ceremony. They're all the same. Don't start acting all high and mighty now." His father followed with, "We gave you a roof and food. Don't forget who paid the bills while you were off playing college kid." Michael stood numb. He unzipped his gown, folded it carefully, and laid it on the bed. He didn't cry. Not then. The tears came later in the silence of early evening, when the sky turned golden behind the skyline. He sat by the window, watching the city blur beneath his eyes, and realized that something in him had finally broken. Not from pain, not from sadness, but from clarity. He would never be enough for them. Not because he lacked anything, but because they refused to see his worth unless it benefited them. The next morning, the phone rang again. It was his father. "Hey, kiddo," Leonard said in a tone that made Michael flinch. "Listen, we've got a bit of a situation. Pipes are leaking under the kitchen. Plumber says it'll be about $3,000. Think you could spot us until we get things sorted out?" Michael's throat closed. There was no congratulations, no "we're proud of you," no acknowledgement of what he had achieved, just a request, a withdrawal from an emotional bank account that had been in overdraft for years. "I haven't even started work yet," Michael said. "Yeah, but you'll be making real money soon, right?" Leonard continued. "You could take out a loan or something. We'd pay you back eventually." Michael paused, the phone pressed to his ear. He saw it now. All of it. Every birthday forgotten. Every ceremony skipped. Every achievement ignored. Every favor framed as a debt owed. He was done. "I need to think about it," he said. Then he hung up. He sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, phone in hand, breathing slowly. Then he opened his laptop. His hands moved with purpose. He typed an email to his new employer in New York. Subject: request to start earlier than scheduled. "Dear Miss Lang, due to unexpected changes in my housing and family situation, I was wondering if it might be possible to begin my employment earlier than the agreed-upon date. I remain enthusiastic and fully committed to the role, and I believe this adjustment would allow me to transition more smoothly into the next phase of my life. Sincerely, Michael Reeves." He hit send. Then he stared out the window again, the city humming with life beyond the glass. He hadn't left yet, but in that moment, for the first time, he was already free. Michael Reeves arrived in New York City on a Tuesday morning beneath a slate-colored sky, his body tense from the cramped bus ride and his mind still unraveling the whirlwind of the previous week. The memory of his graduation, walking the stage alone, seeing his parents post party photos while ignoring the ceremony, fielding their immediate request for money, lingered like a bruise beneath his skin. He had packed his belongings in 3 suitcases, shipped the rest via the cheapest courier service he could find, and told himself that this wasn't running away. It was claiming space. His new employer, the Progressive Urban Policy Institute, PUPI for short, had responded to his email in under 12 hours. Natalie Lang, the deputy director, expressed not only understanding but enthusiasm about him starting earlier than scheduled. "We can offer temporary housing for your first 2 weeks," she had written. "Let me know your arrival time. We'll make it work." And they had. The company had arranged a studio apartment in a corporate housing building on the edge of the East Village. It was modest but modern, pale wood floors, a kitchenette, a window view of rooftops and water towers. On the countertop, Michael found a welcome basket with a handwritten note from Natalie. "Welcome to New York, Michael. We're glad you're here." Those 6 words did more to steady him than anything his parents had said in years. He took a long shower to wash off the exhaustion and sat on the bed with his laptop. The list of onboarding tasks filled a company portal: paperwork, reading materials, and digital training modules. He could have taken a day to settle in, but he didn't. He opened the first training video and pressed play. Work began on Thursday. Michael met the team at Poopy's Midtown office, a converted brownstone with mismatched furniture and potted plants that leaned toward the windows. Natalie introduced him to the staff, a mixture of policy analysts, data scientists, and program coordinators. The environment buzzed with energy, the kind Michael had craved in college: fast-paced, idealistic, ambitious. His desk was tucked beside a window with a view of fire escapes. On it was a branded notebook, a water bottle, and a printed schedule of his first week. A post-it in Natalie's neat handwriting read, "Coffee at 3 is a team ritual. Mandatory." He smiled. That first day, he shadowed 2 meetings, contributed a few cautious observations, and took notes like his life depended on it. His coworkers didn't treat him like a new kid to be tested, but like someone expected to offer something meaningful. It was disorienting. When 3 o'clock came, he joined the others in the communal kitchen. A woman from data science handed him a mug. "You're Michael, right? We've heard good things." From the kitchen window, he could see a patch of the Empire State Building through the city's sprawl. He sipped the coffee slowly, the warmth grounding him. Evenings were quiet. After work, Michael returned to his studio, ate simple meals: rice, lentils, scrambled eggs, and took long walks through the city. He avoided the tourist-heavy routes and wandered through narrow streets where languages mixed midair and corner stores buzzed with fluorescent light. The anonymity soothed him. Here, no one knew where he came from. No one expected him to explain. On the 3rd night, he called Lily, one of his few close friends from college, and gave her a careful update. "I started work early," he said. "It's good, busy." "You sound different," Lily replied. "Different how?" "Lighter," she said, "like something's off your shoulders." He was quiet for a moment. "Maybe something is." She paused, then asked, "Have you told your parents you're here?" "No," he said. "I don't think I'm ready." By the end of the first week, Michael was already assisting on a major policy brief analyzing housing instability post-COVID. His attention to detail caught Natalie's eye. "You're a sharp one," she told him during a team debrief. "Don't hold back in meetings. We hired you for a reason." Her confidence rattled him. It felt unfamiliar. He spent Saturday hunting for permanent housing. After visiting 6 overpriced shoeboxes, he found a small 1-bedroom in Crown Heights. The rent would stretch him thin, but the landlord was flexible, and the place had character: exposed brick, deep windowsills, and just enough creaky charm to feel like a beginning. He moved in the following Friday, armed with 2 suitcases and a folding mattress. He bought a used desk from Craigslist and a chair that wobbled slightly. Still, when he stood in the middle of the room that night, he felt something bloom in his chest. He had a home. His. The messages from his parents continued sporadically. His father sent a text that simply said, "So, what's your address?" His mother followed with, "We're thinking of visiting in July. Flights are expensive, though. Maybe we can stay with you." Michael stared at the screen. He remembered the last time they had visited him in Philadelphia. The complaints, the criticisms, the emotional drain. And now, less than a month after skipping his graduation and asking for money, they wanted to invade his new space. He didn't respond. Instead, he scheduled a session with Dr. Chen, a therapist whose practice specialized in adult children of emotionally neglectful families. He found her through his new insurance provider. During their first video call, Dr. Chen asked him a simple question. "What does family mean to you?" He took a long breath. "Growing up, it meant people who expected me to be useful. Not loved, just useful. And now? I think it means people who show up, who ask without taking, who listen, who don't make me feel like a mistake." She nodded. "Let's start there." They agreed to meet weekly. Michael hadn't realized how much weight he'd been carrying until he started to name it. 2 weeks later, the messages from his parents intensified. His mother called 5 times in one day. His father sent an email with the subject line, "Urgent gutter estimate." Michael ignored them. That evening, as he was leaving work, he received a call from an unknown number. He hesitated, then picked up. "Michael," his mother's voice, "why are you ignoring us?" He froze. "You moved and didn't even tell us," she continued. "Your father and I want to visit. We deserve to see where you're living." The possessiveness in her tone triggered something deep and old in him. "You didn't come to my graduation," he said flatly. "Oh, for heaven's sake, we've been over this." "No," he said, "you skipped the most important day of my life. And your first contact afterward was to ask me for $3,000. That's not fair." "Yes, it is," he said, cutting her off. She went quiet. "I'm building something here," he said, "and I need space to do that." "Michael." "I'll let you know when I'm ready." He hung up. And then, for the first time in years, he blocked their numbers. The silence afterward wasn't empty. It was peaceful. As summer unfolded, Michael poured himself into his work. He joined a weekly trivia group with coworkers. He took yoga classes at a nearby studio. He started cooking real meals, learning recipes online. On Sunday mornings, he wandered through Prospect Park, sipping coffee and letting the city move around him. He read books that weren't assigned. He wrote in the notebook Tom had given him. He made lists of goals that were his alone. Dr. Chen guided him through unpacking childhood beliefs, that love must be earned, that boundaries were disloyalty, that self-worth came only through achievement. "It wasn't your job to fix your parents," she said during one session. "It's your job to heal yourself." He didn't answer right away, but he wrote the words down. And he read them again that night. And again the next morning. Late July brought a surprise. Natalie called him into her office. She handed him a folder. "You've been doing exceptional work," she said. "We'd like to move you to a client-facing role on the environmental policy team. It comes with a raise." Michael blinked. A raise, recognition, trust. He swallowed hard. "Thank you." "You've earned it," she said. "Don't act surprised." He laughed softly. "I guess I'm still getting used to being seen." She smiled. "You better get used to it. We've got big plans for you." That night, he stood on his fire escape, the city pulsing beneath him, and finally felt the full weight of something new. Not freedom, not peace, but belonging, not to anyone else, to himself. And that, he realized, was the beginning of everything. Chapter 5. Everything I Chose. The sun filtered through the slatted blinds in Michael Reeves's apartment as he stirred his coffee, barefoot on the worn wood floor of his Brooklyn kitchen. It had been exactly 1 year since he crossed that stage in Philadelphia alone, diploma clutched in hands that trembled not from fear, but from the weight of disappointment. 1 year since the silence from his parents had solidified into something more than absence. 1 year since he stopped asking for love that was only ever rationed in exchange for obedience. This morning, the kitchen was quiet except for the soft bubbling of the coffee maker and the distant hum of city life beyond his window. He had taken the day off. No meetings, no policy briefs, no endless Zooms about zoning reform. Just a single plan, a solo trip to the mountains. Not to escape, but to mark a chapter closed and another one, his, opened. Michael slipped on his hoodie, packed a small bag, and left his apartment just after sunrise. He took the A train to Penn Station, then a bus north to the trailhead near Bear Mountain. The city gave way to rolling hills and winding roads, the concrete jungle replaced by the rustle of leaves and the cool breath of pine. He started the hike in silence. No music, no podcasts, just the sound of his own footsteps on packed earth and the quiet rhythm of breath moving in and out of lungs that no longer held the tension of unmet expectations. As he climbed, memories surfaced, not as daggers, but as artifacts. He remembered sitting at the kitchen table at 16, working through a scholarship application while his mother watched soap operas at full volume, occasionally yelling at him to stop tapping that pen. He remembered the science fair in middle school, where his meticulously crafted solar panel model sat alone without a parent to admire it. He remembered senior year of high school, staying up until 3 a.m. to finish an essay for AP English, while his father shouted from the other room that nobody wants to hear about your damn books. But for the first time, the memories did not ache. They simply were. Near the top of the ridge, Michael sat on a flat rock that overlooked the river valley below. The view stretched for miles, green hills rolling beneath a pale blue sky, the distant gleam of the Hudson winding like a silver thread. He took out his journal, the same one Tom had given him at graduation, now creased and half-filled. He flipped to the last used page and wrote slowly, "I don't miss the silence anymore. I don't wait for them to say what they never will. I have built a life without permission, and it is mine." A soft breeze stirred the pages. He sat still for a while, letting the calm settle around him like a second skin, and then he stood, took a breath, and began the descent. Back in the city, life resumed its rhythm. Michael's promotion to environmental policy lead had taken root quickly. He managed a team of 3 junior analysts now, each of them reminding him of earlier versions of himself. Eager, overworked, unsure of their place. He made it his mission to mentor without condescension, to offer encouragement without conditions. He remembered what it felt like to walk into a room and wonder if you belonged. With the new role came new visibility. He was asked to speak on panels, invited to submit op-eds, and offered a spot in a certification program on sustainable urban planning. He said yes, not from a need to prove himself, but because he finally believed in the voice he had cultivated. Outside of work, the city had become more than backdrop. It was community. Savannah, now working at a nonprofit legal firm, often hosted quiet dinners at her apartment, where friends shared wine and argued about policy and poetry. Tom had moved to D.C. but called weekly. Lily came to visit every few months, and they explored new neighborhoods like tourists with old roots. Dr. Chen remained a steady presence, though their sessions were now monthly. In one of their more recent conversations, she had asked, "When you think about your parents now, what do you feel?" Michael had paused before answering. "Not hate," he said. "Not love, either, just distance. Necessary distance. It's like standing across a canyon. I can see them, but I don't need to cross it anymore." "And what do you feel about yourself?" she had asked. That had taken longer. Pride, he had finally said, and relief. His relationship with his parents had settled into something that resembled distant diplomacy. After blocking their numbers for 3 months following their attempted visit and financial request, he had unblocked them, not as an olive branch, but as an act of control. He decided when and how to engage. They spoke once a month, usually over the phone. The conversations were brief and rigid: weather updates, neighborhood news, his father's complaints about politics, his mother's commentary on TV shows. They never asked about his work. They never mentioned the graduation. And Michael no longer gave them anything vulnerable to mishandle. He sent birthday and holiday cards, modest gift cards on Christmas. That was all. When his father once brought up that investor opportunity again, Michael had replied calmly, "That's not something I'm willing to participate in." His father had grunted. His mother had said, "Well, don't come asking us for help if things go south." Michael had smiled to himself after hanging up. He never had, and he never would. By autumn, his apartment had transformed from survival space to sanctuary. The walls bore framed prints from local artists, some abstract, some moody depictions of cityscapes. The bookshelf stood tall, filled with dog-eared novels and dense policy texts. A small potted fig tree leaned toward the window. His bed was no longer a borrowed mattress, but a place of comfort. One afternoon, as he returned from work, he found a handwritten note in his mailbox. "Apartment 3D, you left your window slightly open. I closed it for you. Margot, downstairs." It made him smile. He left a thank you note and a chocolate bar the next day. That weekend, Margot invited him to a building potluck. There, over baked ziti and homemade wine, he met neighbors he had only passed in the hallway before. A young couple who taught at public schools, an older man who worked in radio, a woman from Ghana who made pepper soup so spicy his eyes watered. It was the kind of gathering his childhood had never known. Low stakes, warm, human. He went home full, heart and stomach both. Michael began volunteering with a local nonprofit that supported first-generation college students. Once a month, he met with teens navigating financial aid forms, SAT prep, and the quiet grief of chasing dreams their families didn't understand. One of them, a 17-year-old named Elijah, asked him during a mentorship session, "What if your parents don't care about any of it? Like, not even the good stuff?" Michael had looked at him for a long moment before answering. "Then you build something they can't take from you. You find people who do care. You show up for yourself." Elijah had nodded slowly. "I think that's what I want to do." Michael had smiled. "Then start now." The year ended with snow falling over the city in lazy, content flakes. Michael stood by his window, a cup of tea in hand, and watched the lights of the buildings shimmer through the soft white. On his bookshelf stood the framed photo from graduation, not the one with his parents, but the one with Savannah and Tom, Lily and Professor Grayson. His honors cord draped across his shoulders, his eyes tired but shining. Above it hung a single quote printed in black ink on cream paper. "Sometimes walking alone isn't the end of the world. It's the beginning of yours." He touched the frame lightly, then turned back to the kitchen. Dinner waited. Tomorrow would come. And he would meet it, not with permission, not with apology, but with presence. The life he had built was not loud, not flashy, but it was real. It was steady, and for the first time it was enough. It was everything he chose. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And drop a comment below. Where are you watching from? I'd love to know. Your support helps more real stories get heard.